My name's Carrie Gibson. I'm an actor and writer, and I live in Los Angeles. And welcome to Carrie's Corner, where I get to act out all the characters of fun books that hopefully you also like. And maybe you have not read yet, but now's the chance. So I'm going to start with a book that was my mother's favorite book. She used to play all the characters, and it's written a long time ago by a man named Kenneth Graham. It's called The Wind in the Willows. That's the cover of the book. So let's get started. The first chapter is the riverbank. The mole had been working very hard all morning, spring cleaning his little home. First with brooms, then with dusters, then on ladders and steps and chairs, with a brush and a pail of whitewash, till he had dust in his throat and eyes, and splashes of whitewash all over his black fur, and an aching back and weary arms. Spring was moving in the air above and in the earth below and around him, penetrating even his dark and lowly little house. It was small wonder, then, that he suddenly flung down his brush on the floor, said, "Bother!" and "Oh, blow!" and also, "Hang spring cleaning!" and bolted out of the house without even waiting to put on his coat. Something up above seemed to be calling him, and he made for his steep little tunnel. He scraped and scratched and scrabbled and scrooged, and then he scrooged again and scrabbled and scratched and scraped, working busily with his little paws and muttering to himself, "Up we go," till at last, pop, his snout came out into the sunlight, and he found himself rolling in the warm grass of a great meadow. Can you picture that? "This is fine," he said to himself. "This is better than whitewashing." The sunshine struck hot on his fur, soft breezes caressed his heated brow, and after the peace of the underground home he had lived in so long, the carol of happy birds fell in his dulled hearing almost like a shout. Jumping off all his four legs at once, in the joy of living and the delight of spring without its cleaning, he went on his way across the meadow till he reached the hedge on the further side. "Hold up," said an elderly rabbit at the gap. "Sixpence for the privilege of passing by the private road." He was bowled over in an instant by the impatient mole, who trotted along the side of the hedge, chafing the other rabbits as they peeped hurriedly from their holes to see what the row was about. Onion sauce," he remarked jeeringly, and was gone before they could think of a thoroughly satisfactory reply. Then they all started grumbling at each other. "How stupid you are! Why didn't you tell—" "Well, why didn't you say—" "You might have reminded him," and so on in the usual way, but of course it was then much too late, as is always the case. It all seemed too good to be true. Hither and thither through the meadows he rambled busily along the hedgerows, along the copses, finding everywhere birds building, flowers budding, leaves thrusting, everything happy and progressive and occupied. And instead of having an uneasy conscience pricking him and whispering, "Whitewash," he somehow could only feel how jolly it was to be the only idle dog among all these busy citizens. After all, the best part of a holiday is perhaps not so much to be resting yourself as to see all the other fellows busy working. He thought his happiness was complete when, as he wandered aimlessly along, suddenly he stood by the edge of a full-fed river. Never in his life had he seen a river before, this sleek, twisting, powerful animal, chasing and chuckling, this gripping things with a gurgle and leaving them with a laugh, to fling itself on fresh playmates that shook themselves free and were caught and held again. All was a shake and a shiver, glints and gleams and sparkles, rustle and swirl, chatter and bubble. The mole was bewitched, entranced, fascinated. By the side of the river he trotted, and tired at last, he sat on the bank while the river chattered on. As he sat on the grass and looked across the river, the dark hole in the bank opposite, just above the water's edge, caught his eye, and dreamily he fell to considering what a nice, snug dwelling place it would make for an animal with a few wants and fond of a riverside residence, above flood level and away from noise and dust. As he gazed, something bright and small seemed to twinkle down in the heart of it, vanished, then twinkled once more like a tiny star. But it could hardly be a star in such an unlikely situation, and it was too glittering and small for a glowworm. Then, as he looked, it winked at him, and so declared itself to be an eye, and a small face began gradually to grow up around it, like a frame around a picture. A brown little face with whiskers, a grave round face with the same twinkle in its eye that had first attracted his notice, small neat ears and thick silky hair. It was the water rat. Then the two animals stood and regarded each other cautiously. "Hello, Mole," said the water rat. "Hello, Rat," said the Mole. "Would you like to come over?" asked the rat presently. "Oh, well, it's all very well to talk," said the Mole, rather crossly, he being new to a river and riverside life and its ways. The rat said nothing, but stooped and unfastened a rope and hauled on it, then lightly stepped into a little boat which the Mole had not observed. It was painted blue outside and white within, and was just the size for two animals, and the Mole's whole heart went out to it at once, even though he did not yet fully understand its uses. The rat sculled smartly across and made fast. Then he held up his forepaw as the Mole stepped gingerly down. "Lean on that," he said. "Now then, step lively." And the Mole, to his surprise and rapture, found himself actually seated in the stern of a real boat. "This has been a wonderful day," said he, as the rat shoved off and took to the sculls again. "Do you know, I've never been in a boat before in all my life." "What?" cried Rat, open-mouthed. "Never been in a... You never... Well, What have you been doing, then?" "Is it so nice as all that?" said the Mole shyly, though he was quite prepared to believe it as he leant back in his seat and looked at the cushions, the oars, the rowlocks, and all the fascinating fittings, and felt the boat sway lightly under him. "Nice? It's the only thing," said the rat solemnly, as he leant forward for his stroke. "Believe me, my young friend, this is nothing, absolutely nothing half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. Simply messing," he went on dreamily, "messing about in boats, messing—" "Look ahead, Rat!" cried the Mole suddenly. It was too late. The boat struck the bank, full tilt. The dreamer, the joyous oarsman, lay on his back at the bottom of the boat, heels in the air. "About in boats, or with boats," the rat went on, picking himself up with a pleasant laugh. "In or out of 'em, it doesn't matter. Nothing seems really to matter. That's the charm of it. Whether you get away or whether you don't, whether you arrive at your destination or whether you reach somewhere else, and whether you never get anywhere at all, you're always busy, and you never do anything in particular, and when you're done, it's always there's something else to do, and you can do it if you like, but you'd much better not. Look here, if you've really nothing else on hand this morning, supposing we drop down the river together and have a long day of it." The Mole waggled his toes from sheer happiness, spread his chest with a sigh of full contentment, and leaned back blissfully into the soft cushions. "What a day I'm having," he said. "Let us start at once." "Hold hard a minute then," said the rat. He looped the painter through a ring in his landing stage, climbed up into his hole above, and after a short interval reappeared, staggering under a fat wicker luncheon basket. "Shove that under your feet," he said to the Mole, as he... I just want to show you this one picture. This is beautifully illustrated. Said the Mole, as he passed it down into the boat. Then he untied the painter and took the sculls again. "What's inside it?" asked the Mole, wriggling with curiosity. "Well, there's cold chicken inside it," replied the rat briefly. "Cold tongue, cold ham, cold beef, pickled, Herkin salad, French rolls, crescent sandwich, spotted meat, ginger beer, lemon, and soda water." "Oh, stop, cried the Mole in ecstasy. "This is too much." "Do you really think so?" inquired the rat seriously. "It's only what I always take on these little excursions, and the other animals are always telling me that I'm a mean beast and cut it very fine." The Mole never heard a word he was saying, absorbed in the new life he was entering upon, intoxicated with the sparkle, the ripple, the scents, and the sounds, and the sunlight. He trailed a paw in the water, dreamed long waking dreams. The water rat, like the good little fellow he was, sculled steadily on and did not disturb him. "I like your clothes awfully, old chap," he remarked after some half an hour or so had passed. "I'm going to get a black velvet smoking suit myself some day, as soon as I can afford it." "I beg your pardon," said the Mole, pulling himself together with an effort. "You must think me very rude, but all this is so new to me. So, this is a river?" "The river," corrected the rat. "And you really live by the river? What a jolly life." "By it, and with it, and on it, and in it," said the rat. It's brother and sister to me, and aunts and company and food and drink and naturally washing. It's my world and I don't want any other. What it hasn't got is not worth having, and what it doesn't know is not worth knowing. Look at the times we've had together. Whether in winter or summer, spring or autumn, it's always got its fun and its excitements. When the floods are on in February and my cellars and basement are brimming with drink that's no good to me and the brown water runs by my best bedroom window, or again when it all drops away and shows patches of mud that smells like plum cake and the rushes and the weed clog the channels and I can potter about dry shod over most of the benefit and find fresh food to eat and things careless people have dropped out of boats.
But isn't it a bit dull at times? The mole ventured to ask. Just you and the river, and no one else to pass a word with.
No one else to... Well, I mustn't be hard on you, said the rat patiently. You're new to it, and of course you don't know. The bank is so crowded nowadays that many people are moving away altogether. Oh no, it isn't what it used to be at all. Otters, kingfishers, dab chicks, moorhens, all of them about all day long and always wanting you to do something as if a fellow has no business of his own to attend to.
What lies over there?
Asked the mole, waving a paw towards a background of woodland that darkly framed the water meadows on one side of the river. That? Oh, that's just the wild wood, said the rat shortly. We don't go there very much, we river bankers.
Aren't they very nice people in there?
Said the mole a trifle nervously. Well, replied the rat, let me see. The squirrels are all right, and the rabbits, some of them, but rabbits are a mixed lot. And then there's Badger, of course. He lives right in the heart of it. Wouldn't live anywhere else, either, if you paid him to do it. Dear old Badger. Nothing interferes with him. They'd better not, he added significantly.
Why, who should interfere with him? Asked the mole.
Well, of course there are others, explained the rat in a hesitating sort of way. Weasels and stoats and foxes and so on. They're all right in a way. I'm very good friends with them. Pass the time of day when we meet and all that. But they break out sometimes, there's no denying it, and then, well, you can't really trust them, and that's the fact.
And beyond the wild wood again? Mole asked, where it's all blue and dim, and one sees what may be hills, or perhaps they mayn't, and something like the smoke of towns, or is it only cloud drift?
Beyond the wild wood comes the wide world, said the rat, and that's something that doesn't matter either to you or me. I've never been there, and I'm never going. Nor you. Either, if you've got any sense at all. Don't ever refer to it again, please. Now then, here's our backwater at last, where we're going to lunch. Leave the main stream. I now passed into what seemed at first sight like a little landlocked lake. Green turf sloped down to either edge. Brown snaky tree roots gleamed below the surface of the quiet water. Ahead of them, the foamy tumble of a weir, arm in arm with a restless dripping mill wheel that held up a gray gabbled mill house, filled the air with a soothing murmur of sound. It was so very beautiful that the mole could only hold up both forepaws and gasp, "Oh my, oh my, oh my!" The rat brought the boat alongside the bank, made her fast, helped the mole safely ashore, and swung out the lunch basket. The mole begged as a favor to be allowed to unpack it all by himself, and the rat was very pleased to indulge him and to sprawl at full length on the grass and rest while his excited friend shook out the tablecloth and spread it, took out all the mysterious packets one by one, and arranged their contents in due order, still gasping, "Oh my," at each fresh revelation. When all was ready, the rat said, "Now pitch in, old fellow." And the mole was indeed very glad to obey, for he had started his spring cleaning at a very early hour that morning, as people will do, and had not paused for food or drink, and he had been through a very great deal since that distant time which now seemed so many days ago. "What are you looking at?" said the rat presently, when the edge of their hunger was somewhat dulled, and the mole's eyes were able to wander off the tablecloth a little.
"I'm looking," said the mole, "at a streak of bubbles that I see travelling along the surface of the water. That is the thing that strikes me as funny."
"Bubbles? Ho ho!" said the rat, and chirped cheerily in an inviting sort of way. A broad, glistening muzzle showed itself above the edge of the bank, and the otter hauled himself out and shook the water from his coat. "Greedy beggars," he observed, making for the food. There's another full-page picture. Pretty beautifully illustrated book. "Greedy beggars, Why didn't you invite me, Ratty? There was an unplanned affair, explained the rat. By the way, my friend, Mr. Mole. Proud, I'm sure, said the otter, and the two animals were friends forthwith. Such a rumpus everywhere, continued the otter. All the world seems out on the river today. I came up this backwater to try and get a moment's peace, and then stumble upon you fellows, and least, I beg pardon. I don't exactly mean that, you know. There was a rustle behind them, coming from a hedge, wherein last year's leaves still clung thick, and a stripy head, with high shoulders behind it, peered forth on them. Come on, old badger, shouted the rat. The badger trotted forward a pace or two, then grunted, company, and turned his back and disappeared from view. That's just the sort of fellow he is, observed the disappointed rat. Simply hates society. Now, we shan't see any more of him today. Well, tell us who's out on the river. Well, Toad's out, for one, replied the otter, in his brand new wager boat, new togs, new everything. The two animals looked at each other and laughed. Once it was nothing but sailing, said the rat. Then he tired of that and took to punting. Nothing would please him but to punt all day and every night, and a nice mess he made of it. Last year it was houseboating. We all had to go and stay with him in his houseboat and pretend we liked it. He was going to spend the rest of his life in a houseboat. It's all the same. Whatever he takes up, he gets tired of it and starts on something fresh. Such a good fellow, too, remarked the otter reflectively, but no stability, especially in a boat. From where they sat, they could get a glimpse of the main stream across the island that separated them, and just then a wager boat flashed into view. The rower, a short, stout figure, splashing badly and rolling a good deal, but working his hardest. The rat stood up and hailed him, but Toad, for it was he, shook his head and settled sternly in his work. He'll be out of that boat in a minute if he rolls like that, said the rat, sitting down. Of course he will, chuckled the otter. Did I ever tell you that good story about Toad and the lock keeper? It happened this way, Toad. And that's where we're going to stop our story today. Stay tuned for the next part of Chapter 1 tomorrow at Carrie's Corner. Please subscribe. Thanks for listening.